Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another segment of Let's Talk Fort Worth. I'm Carrie Hines, your host. A reminder, we do not own the rights to the music you just heard. Also, we're going to ask you tonight to please click tag share. Tell someone Let's Talk Fort Worth is on the air. And we're about to speak with Sheila Weinberg. She's the founder and CEO of an organization called Truth in Accounting. Truth in Accounting, back in January of this year, released a report giving a breakdown of the City of Fort Worth's financing. They graded the city a D. But before we tell all about the report, let's talk a little bit about Truth in Accounting. Truth in Accounting is a 501c3 nonpartisan organization out of Chicago that was founded in 2002. Truth in Accounting believes that to be knowledgeable participants in the government's financial decisions, citizens need accurate and complete financial information. Their work has focused on encouraging public entities to produce financial reports that are comprehensive, clear, and transparent, and informing the public of the importance of truthful accounting. They analyze government accounting data from all 50 states and 75 of the largest cities in the country to produce annual assessments of government finances. They use a methodology to cut through the accounting tricks and to show the true fiscal condition of each state and city, including the health of the pension plans. They derive all of their numbers directly from the comprehensive annual financial report of each city. That said, this report that you will hear more about tonight was the numbers came directly from the City of Fort Worth's website. This week, I gave a copy of this report to the City of Fort Worth. I was instructed to speak with Mark McAvoy. Mr. McAvoy is the director of the City of Fort Worth's Planning and Data Analytics Department. I spoke with him via phone. We discussed the report. He asked for a copy of it. I provided it for him or to him while we were on the phone, and he confirmed he received it. He told me that he would review the report and get back with me. When he did not, I contacted him again via email to see what were his findings. He thanked me for following up, then said he had reviewed it and had no comment. I must admit, I did not expect that answer. However, the day after I gave them the report, I found that the CFO department, the CFO, that's the Chief Financial Officer here in the City of Fort Worth, their office contacted Truth in Accounting to ask if they could explain to them how they derived the numbers that they did. Now remember, again, Truth in Accounting does this in all 50 states and 75 of the largest cities. So they've been doing this since 2002. They're no rookies to this. So does that mean that the numbers are correct? And if so, does that mean that the pension plans and the health care plans of the employees are in trouble? Now, one thing I found impressive about Truth in Accounting, they had a mission statement on their website that says their purpose is to educate and empower citizens with understandable, reliable, and transparent government financial information. If you look at the report, and I posted it on my Facebook page, it's pretty simplified. It's just a couple of things I was unclear about, and I definitely want to ask Ms. Weinberg about that tonight. But it's pretty clear. It's as though they made it in layman's terms so that you wouldn't get caught up in all of the cute terms that they can use to hide what's really going on. And so this particular organization has no reason to pick on anyone. Again, they do it in all 50 states and 75 of the largest cities. So Ms. Weinberg is supposed to be with us shortly to break it down, because I won't even begin to tell you that I understand how they do what they do. But what they did find, I can tell you this, is that we were $2.4 billion in the red. And that's a lot of money. And that's not $2.4 million, that's $2.4 billion. And so it's kind of like starting at a race, and the other people have already taken off, because how do you ever catch up? Again, the findings are that there's $2.4 billion shortfall in the budget, and that equates to an extra $9,400 passed on to each taxpayer. That's a lot of money. And so tonight we want to talk with Ms. Weinberg to better. And y'all, I know y'all are tired of listening to me, and I'm tired of talking. I want to do some listening tonight. I want to hear from her, and she's on the line. Good evening, Ms. Weinberg. How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
We're good. Listen, I'm out here going, Lord Jesus, please let her call in tonight. Yeah, I'm out here now. Listen, you know, we've talked a lot about your report in the last 30 minutes. Can you give us a little bit about your background and how you came to create or come up with an organization like this?
I started Truth in Accounting in 2002, honestly over my frustration over the federal government's financial accounting. I don't know if you remember, I'm not sure how old you are, that back then we were, quote, in the late 90s, we were, quote, running surpluses as far as the eye could see. Do you remember that?
I do.
And my research, but they were telling us at the same time that the debt was going up. And I was like, I think that would be impossible to do. You can't have a surplus and have your debt go up at the same time. So I'd studied the federal budget and understood that we really weren't running a surplus at that time. And in fact, if Social Security alone was accounted for properly, we were actually running a $500 billion deficit back then. And so after the 2000 election, I was like, did we just elect the leader of the largest financial organization based upon the wrong numbers? And so therefore, I'm not a complainer, I'm a doer. So I started Truth in Accounting to educate people about the true numbers of the federal debt. And every time I spoke in states, they said, well, if you think the federal government's books are bad, you should also see the states. So we started doing the states, and then recently, in the last 3 or 4 years, we've started to do a financial state of the 75 most populous cities, which includes Fort Worth.
Wow. So I understand from your staff that once I gave the city of Fort Worth your report, they contacted your office. Is that true?
Yeah, they gave me a call and wanted to know how we'd calculated the numbers. They're not that much different than what they're calculating, and I was able to quote easily go through their numbers and show them where we'd come up with the numbers for our report, and they didn't seem to have any problems with it. So that's what happened from that conversation.
So you talked to this, I understand, the CFO's office.
I believe it was the CFO's office. I'm not for sure, but it was that's what I was told. It was the CFO's office.
Okay. So you talk with our CFO's office, and your report is basically saying we are $2.4 billion, that's billion with a B, in the red, technically, and they say, okay, we agree with you?
Well, actually, I'm looking at their report because we do our numbers based upon the September 30th, 2019 numbers from their report. And their numbers are actually not as good as our numbers. They actually show that the city needs $2.7 million to pay their bills, and we're probably using. I know that we're using newer information than they had. So they're actually reporting at that time a higher money needed to pay bills than we were reporting.
Whoa. So did you just say 2.7? Because I think you misspoke when you said million. So we're actually 2.7 billion
Yes, those N's and B's, and then you get into T's. They get confusing after a while. Yeah, it's $2.7 billion, and that's a large number. So we take our $2.4 billion and we divide that by the number of taxpayers in the city, and that comes out to $9,400 per taxpayer.
$9,400 per taxpayer. Okay, so for somebody who does not understand, well, I should say I don't understand accounting. I'm not very good at accounting. But I would think that 2.4 is a really bad number. $2.4 billion in a shortfall is really bad in terms of, like, missing some money or lost some money or not accounting for some money. I saw you gave them a D grade.
Yeah, what we do is we take each cities, and we do this for the states and the federal government also. And if a city has between $5,000 and $20,000 per taxpayer of debt, we give them a D grade. Now, the per taxpayer debt, the $9,400, represents, this is the amount of money that future taxpayers are going to have to pay in taxes. That's why we call it a taxpayer burden. They're going to be burdened with paying $9,400 in future taxes, and they're not going to receive any goods or services for those taxes. It's kind of like a credit card. It's like paying off an old credit card. The city's charged up their pension and retiree health care credit card, and these future taxpayers are going to have to come up with the money to pay that credit card.
Okay. Then let's start with your report. Okay.
Okay.
You say at the top the total assets. So you tell us that our total assets are what?
$7.8 billion. And then we come down, and in our report we take off your capital assets and your capital asset debt, because we don't think that you should be selling your buildings, bridges, and like Illinois, Chicago, they sold their Skyway. We don't think that that's a prudent financial thing. So you shouldn't be selling your capital assets to pay off your debt. So we removed that. We also remove what they call restricted assets. These are assets that are restricted by law or contract. So either the city has said, hey, we have this fund, we only can spend it for a certain amount, or like the federal government might have given them some money and they can only pay, they can't use that. Its use is restricted. So the capital assets we're taking off are $5.7 billion. We're taking off restricted assets of $229 million to come up with assets available to pay bills of $1.9 billion. From that, we take off the total bills, which are $4.3 billion, and then we come up with money needed to pay bills of $2.4 billion. We divide that by the number of estimated taxpayers in the city of $9,400. To give you a more detailed version of what the bills are, those are bonds, other liabilities. So the other liabilities, again, we're removing the capital the debt related to those capital assets that we didn't include in our analysis. And then we're adding $2.3 billion of unfunded pension liabilities and $791 million of unfunded retiree health care liabilities. That's how we calculate the bills. So you can see that the $2.4 billion of money needed to pay bills, that number closely relates to the unfunded pension and retiree health care liabilities. So what the city officials have done is gone ahead and promised their employees benefits, but they have not put money aside as the employee earned those benefits. So then, again, future taxpayer is going to have to pay for a retiree's retirement benefits, even though that retiree isn't currently working for them.
You said that for every $1 promised in the pension benefits, that the city has only set aside 50 cents for those benefits.
Yes, they have. They've gone ahead again and promised those benefits, but they haven't set enough money aside to pay those benefits.
Wow. And then you also say for every $1 promised in retiree health care benefits called other post-employment benefits, the city has only set aside 9 cents per that dollar?
Yeah, they unfortunately, again, if you have to think about it as it's a little bit of a difficult concept, but if you think about somebody's compensation package, so a compensation package would include their salaries, and they're obviously paying that as they go along because they have to write a paycheck for it. And then they have to, pay the current workers current health care. And then as also part of their compensation package is the pensions that they're earning every single year and the retiree health care benefits that they're earning every single year. And what the city has chosen to do with their retiree health care benefits is pretty much handle those as a pay-as-you-go. So they're really not setting, as it mentioned, only 9 cents is set aside for every dollar promised. So they're not setting aside this money for this retiree. And another way to think about it is if you have a retired city worker and the city is paying for their current health care, well, that worker is not providing any current taxpayers with any benefits. That money, the former taxpayers who that guy worked for should have paid and put money aside for this worker. But the city chooses to handle that on what they call a pay-as-you-go basis. So there's very little money set aside to handle those benefits.
And I wish somebody on the line could tell me what that number was, but I know we have a 2022 bond coming up where we're going to be adding, if it's approved, additional debt. Do you think adding another bond to this already high shortfall is a smart idea?
Well, it depends on what the bond is going to be used for. Again, you have to think about it like your house. If you're borrowing money to buy a house, you have to look, if I'm going to spend, say, $300,000 on a house, is the house worth $300,000? If I take out a loan, to pay $300,000 for the house, is it worth it? So if the city is going to use that money wisely to spend on capital assets, which, again, future taxpayers are going to get the benefit of, it might be a good idea to have those assets. If they're just going to use it on current services and benefits, then there's no reason they should have they have reasons, but as far as a taxpayer perspective, there's no reason that they should borrow money that future taxpayers are going to have to pay to cover current costs of services and benefits that current taxpayers are benefiting from.
I think somebody on the line can tell me what that number is. Good evening, Bob Willoughby. What is that number for the bond? How much is it?
Well, Carrie, what number is that? I don't think I have an answer for that one. I hadn't gotten the queue, but what is it? Run it by me again.
Okay, what was the amount of the new bond, the 2022 bond that's coming up?
Oh, how much money it's going to be?
Yeah.
I believe it's somewhere around in the $300 million range there, and that's the problem we're having right now, is that I can't even get community engagement to return a phone call where I've got some of the information on the bond that's coming out, and I want the taxpayers and us to be involved in the process of how those boxes are laid out, and the city don't let us in on that part. They usually don't bring us into it until it gets close to the end, to where you don't have much choice. You get these little boxes with stuff in them, and either you take everything in the box or you just miss the whole box, and the box will be full with items that are no good, but one item that's mainly good. Kind of like playground equipment was in the last one, $750,000 for playground equipment, $6.5 million for the new Rockwood Golf Course clubhouse. Well, we didn't want the clubhouse, but if we wanted the playground equipment, we had to take the clubhouse. So I've been at them for the last month. Go ahead.
Let me ask Ms. Weinberg this. So for items like that, should we add to our budget for things like playgrounds? If we're already
it depends on if, the taxpayers want that. Do they want a golf course? Do they want a playhouse? And again, are they getting, value for their buck? Are they spending, market value for those? So, that is a question for taxpayers. And again, your caller is highlighting, another reason I started Truth in Accounting was because citizens are not being provided enough information to be knowledgeable participants in the city's finances. So they're making financial decisions, and the citizens don't have enough information to decide, well, is that a good idea or not a good idea? And that is the main reason I started Truth in Accounting.
Well, let me ask you,
that's right on, right there.
Okay. So when you have a $2.4 billion shortfall, are you forever chasing the ball, or do you ever balance that off? I mean, how do you ever balance $2.4 billion?
Well, what the city would say is, well, you don't really need to worry about it. Over time, we're going to pay that debt off. Again, kind of like a credit card. Over time, we're going to pay the credit card off, and so it's not a big problem. Sometimes they'll equivocate it to a mortgage. Obviously, everybody has debt. They have, debt mortgage. Well, it's not debt mortgage because on mortgage like a debt like a mortgage, because once you get done paying off the mortgage, you have a house. Once you get, it's more like credit card debt, where once you're just paying off for old bills that should have been included in a prior balanced budget. The city went ahead and for years said, "Hey, we're balancing our budget." And the voters said, "Oh, well, they must be doing good." They're balancing the budget. Well, somehow they've balanced the budget and accumulated, $2.4 billion of debt at the same time.
A city employee was recently sent to prison here, and they said that he had stolen $700,000 from the city. So how does someone get a chance to steal $700,000?
That one I wouldn't know. You'd have to have a forensic auditor come in, or somebody. But you have to worry about, does the city have adequate, internal controls to, if there's somebody stealing that much money, it appears that they don't have, adequate internal controls to avoid that.
Okay. Because somebody, I was saying in the intro that a recent mayoral candidate who used to be a city council person kept speaking of corruption, and he said, if you elect me your new mayor, I'll clean up corruption downtown. So we were just trying to speculate, was the corruption about people stealing money, and if so, we felt like he should have told us before he got on the campaign trail. He should have told us as a city council person, but he didn't. And now he didn't win the election, so we're not sure if we're ever going to find out what he was referring to. So let me ask you.
Yeah, and the thing we were about, again, is that balanced budget requirement. The city has a balanced budget requirement in there for a very good reason. And it's so that the politicians can't spend, i.e. they're going to get a vote, without the pain of taxing, i.e. they're going to lose a vote. And that's why you have a balanced budget, so you can keep these things equal. And because the city hasn't been balancing their budget, they've actually been incurring debt. This goes back to accountability. When the voters, again, went to the voting booth, they assumed that the city was doing fine because they were told that the budgets were balanced. We're living within their means. Well, would those voters have made a different decision if they knew that while they were, quote, balancing this budget, they were accumulating $2.4 billion? While they were, quote, balancing this budget, they over time had promised the employees $4.6 billion of $4.6 billion of benefits, but only put $2.3 billion aside to fund those. We won't ever know the answer to that, and it's really hurting, the representative form of government there in the city and all over the country, because this is going on in other states and cities, unfortunately.
Years ago I did a show where I interviewed a whole, 25 people on one show who were all city employees, and it was a town in Alabama. I don't even remember the town. And the town had gone bankrupt. The city had gone bankrupt. And so all of their pensions, one day they expected the mail to come with the check, and the check stopped coming. And they went to the city and said, where's my pension? And the city basically said, we don't have any money to pay you. So is that a situation that employees at the city of Fort Worth who retire out may eventually see happen to them?
They might. Again, they only have 51 cents set aside for every dollar they've promised. Are they, going to be able to, afford this? And again, we're looking at assets of $2.3 billion. The pension plan does have assets of $2.3 billion, but that is offset by the $4.6 billion of, pension benefits they have promised. And I always find it kind of funny because I will hear people in cities and states will say, oh, well, when the stock market takes a crash, they're like, well, at least I'm not in the stock market, so it didn't affect me. Well, guess what? A lot of these pensions are in the stock market, these pension assets, and when the market takes a hit, I should say some. I shouldn't say a lot. I don't know what percentage it is. But when the stock market takes a hit, then the pension plan's assets take a hit. And if, real estate prices go down, if the economy goes down, these pension assets take a hit. Well, but the benefits have been promised, so therefore the taxpayers are going to have to make up the difference. Or, maybe, as you say, the pensioners are not going to get their benefits.
So how does the citizen do a check and balance on the city's budget to make sure we're not here again? Do we take your sheet and create a blueprint and do these numbers each year to see where we are?
Well, what you can do, and unfortunately this is after the fact, but I think you can use it as current evidence. You can actually go. Obviously take our sheet. You can go to our data-z.org website, and right now our 2019 numbers are up. But you can also go to your cities. Go to Fort Worth financial. Go to the city's financial website. And search for something called their comprehensive annual financial report. And then the most important number in that report, so it's the comprehensive annual financial report, and the most important number in that report is something called unrestricted net position. And that number, let me see what that was, because they do have their 2020 report out. So let's see what that number is. I'm looking for it right now. I have their report up. And you can also go to our website and find a link to their comprehensive annual financial report. Let me double check. I don't see that I have the 2020 report up. But again, I can go to our data-z.org website. You can click on, go to, I'm just going to do it myself so I'm not steering you guys wrong. I'm going to go to click on Fort Worth, and then you can click on, then that will give you our Fort Worth page. And then from there at the very bottom is, again, a link to their comprehensive annual financial reports. And then I'm going to pull up the 2021. Which is available. We didn't have it available. It's the next page. It's called they're calling it the audited financials. So I'm going to click on that, and then that appears. Then the comprehensive annual financial report appears on that page. And then I'm going to look at that report. It's loading, so it may take a little bit of time. And so you can go to that report. In that report, you can go to a page called the Statement of Net Position.
Okay.
And
Statement of Position. Okay.
Net Position. And then in the Statement of Net Position, and that will list all of the city's assets. It will also list all of the city's liabilities. And then it will have a section called Net Position, parentheses, Deficit. And in that section, we'll have a number called Unrestricted Deficit. And in 2019, that number was $2.7 billion. And I think I have the 2020 loaded, so let me pull that one up, and I can tell you what that was in their most recent report. And that's the number. That's the most important number on this report. So in 2020, that number had dropped to $1.5 billion.
So it dropped to what?
It dropped to $1.5 billion. And the reason for the drop, I think it's noted in our report because we ran across the same thing, is that they changed their pension benefits, so the employees are not going to get all the benefits that they were promised. And they also changed what they call their discount rate, the rate at which it's a very complicated thing, but because you're promising benefits in the future, you have to discount those back to today, and so they changed that rate. So they must have increased that rate, and therefore their liability dropped.
Wow. So they actually, if you were a city employee, you lost some of the benefits that had been promised to you.
Yes.
Yeah. Wow, that ain't good. So let me ask you this: how does someone find your report? I mean, I don't know how Tisa Leggett found you because I never heard of you before she put that online. How do you all circulate your reports?
So we have again, it's our data-c.org website, and again, the citizens can go to our city section and click on Fort Worth, and it's there. And this again is one city of the 75 most populated cities that we study. We also study the 50 states. So you can get it there. We do our best to. We are a small organization, always trying to grow with donations from people like your listeners. I'll put that plug in there. Yes. We do our best and try to promote it to as many media outlets we can in Fort Worth and throughout the country. So when we issue the report, we send press releases to the media contacts in your city and state.
Oh, did y'all hear that? So our mainstream media already knew about the report. They just didn't release the report to the people.
Right.
Wow. That's very telling. That part right there is very telling, because I was trying to understand, like, how do you get the word out that you've done? I mean, you've done all this great work, so how do people know that it's done? So you're telling the media that it's done, and the media chooses whether or not they're going to release it to the people.
Right. Yeah, because we obviously can't release it to everybody. We try to. That's why we put it on our website, but we try to have the media, try to push it out for us. Other information that is on that report is that Fort Worth, there's 75 cities that we study, the most populated, and it is 54th out of 75. So there are 53 other cities who are doing better than Fort Worth.
Whoa.
And again, keep in mind that even though the city has a balanced budget requirement, therefore what we call their taxpayer burden, the money needed to pay bills, should be zero, because they should have been balancing their budget, but instead it's $2.4 billion, $9,400 per taxpayer.
We're under a city manager type of government here, and recently, as a lot of our old council was leaving, getting ready for the new council to be brought in, they were commending the city manager and saying that he was doing a wonderful job. Based on the way that you do these numbers, would you say that you agree with that?
Well, we're looking at their financial condition, and are you doing it? I would leave it up to your listeners. Are they doing a good job if they're balancing the budget but they've gone into debt? Now, we don't know when that debt has accumulated. I'm going to do on our website, Data-C. There is the ability to create your own charts. It's a really fantastic, user-friendly option that we have, and I'm just going to click on it's called charts, and then you go to create your own charts. So I'm going to look at the pension debt and the retiree health care debt. I can click on those, and then I can click on Fort Worth. Let's see, under the S. Okay, not Fort Wayne. I keep on mentioning that. And we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years of data. So I'm going to click on the 5 years of data we have, and then it says generate a chart, and just see when, see what the debt was in 2015, the pension debt versus what we have now. So in 2015, it was $2.4 billion. So how long I don't know how long the city manager has been there, but if he's only been there a short period. Go ahead.
Since 2014.
Okay, so this pension debt could have accumulated before his time came in to give him, the benefit of the doubt. But what I would say about the retiree health care debt is that, again, they're balancing their budget. The employees are earning the right to receive these benefits, and as part of that balanced budget, they're not putting money aside to pay those benefits. So, you could argue that that is not, financially prudent thing to do.
Well, who can we blame? Because you know what, when somebody tells me that I got $9,400 bill that I didn't even know I had, who do I blame?
You blame your prior, and again, our study started in 2015, so I don't know when these pension debts accumulated, but I would blame the people who accumulated them. And then let me see if I can quickly find whether, again, they're not setting aside. The current people can be blamed for not putting money aside for those retiree health care benefits. And I may be able to, I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to quickly find out whether they've set money aside. Whether they've been setting the correct money aside to fund their pension benefits. I'm not sure about that. Let me see if I can quickly go to our schedules and see if they're doing that. It's hard. It's very hard to tell the answer to that. But for the
point the finger at somebody.
What's that?
We're going to want to point the finger at somebody when you say 2 points.
So for 2019. Their schedules indicate that or the pension plan schedules indicate that the actuaries, those math people who are hired by the pension plan, those actuaries said that the city should have put $136 million of money aside to properly fund the benefits. So another way to think about that is your minimum payment on your credit card. The minimum payment on their pension credit card should have been $136 million, but they chose to only contribute $113 million. So you can blame them for not paying the minimum on their pension credit card, and then saying to the citizens that we balance the budget.
Wow. So now this is the good part. So when you looked at the website, which we probably wouldn't have even understood, we thank you for what you did. When you looked at the website, did you see the numbers for them to be saying like everything's fine, no problem, we're good here? Is that the way they were presenting it to us?
Well, the reason that would let me see if their financial report mentions that.
Because the reason I say that is because until your report was generated, trust me, no one in Fort Worth was talking about a $2.4 billion shortfall in the budget. So I think everybody, along with myself, was thinking we were good.
Yeah. No, well, I would say, yeah, and you thought that you were good because they told you they were balancing their budget. And therefore you assumed that they were living within their means.
Right.
But you can't balance your budget and incur this debt at the same time. But they were doing that.
Wow. And we built a bridge. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead yourself. You go ahead.
No, we built a bridge that was never completed, and I wish somebody could Google right now how much money did we spend on Panther Island. It was a bridge that has not been completed, and it's been a real big controversy over that. And where did the money actually go? Because it makes no sense where we are in terms of that budget. And so the money is just basically has been spent, but there's no explaining when it's going to be completed or anything like that. And so the question is, where's the money that we put in there, and when's the completion date, and that type of thing, I think is all up in the air. And so I just question that.
Yeah.
The dollars. Yeah.
I didn't I didn't research what the city is officials are telling your residents there about the budget. But again, we know that they do have a balanced budget requirement. All 75 cities do, and every state does except for Vermont.
Okay. Did you find what you were looking for? Because someone has a question for you if you're willing to take a question.
No, I'd be happy to take a question.
Okay, we're going to go to 314-381. Good evening. You're on Let's Talk Fort Worth.
Hello, Carrie. How are you?
Good evening. How are you?
I'm just here laughing.
Why are you laughing?
You asked the question, who's to blame for it?
Mm-hmm.
You know who's to blame for it, Carrie? The people are. The people are to blame. That's your government. And you're supposed to be up to everything that goes on in that government, because eventually you're going to be liable. I heard the lady say that each citizen's portion is like $9,000 or something like that.
Yeah.
Well just everybody pay $9,000 and get out of debt.
Well, let me ask our guest. So, Ms. Weinberg, are we responsible, the citizens, for this shortfall, or is it on the back of someone else?
Well, that's the amount that future taxpayers are going to have to pay. So that is, in order to get the city's, finances in straight, yes, you could have everybody send $9,400 each taxpayer. It works out a little more than per household, but you have to each taxpayer would have to, send City Hall $9,400, and then the city would be, in good shape. I'm not saying they have to do that. They have. And the city will kind of say this. We always get this argument of Truth in Accounting is saying that our current debt and what we have to pay right now is, $9,400 per taxpayer. And we're like, no. We're not. You have chosen to pay that amount over time like a credit card. We're just saying your current credit card balance is $9,400 per taxpayer. You're choosing to pay it over time. But the caller is right. In order, each taxpayer is on the hook for this right now, unless they can go to the elected officials, say you need to adjust pensions or you need to adjust other spending and services and benefits. We're going to be on the hook for it. Now, we have this debate internally at Truth in Accounting of who is responsible for this. Is it the people who voted the people in office? Is it the city officials? And it's really hard to tell, because since the citizens aren't being given the information they need to be knowledgeable participants in their government's financial decisions, are they responsible? Some people would say no. But then the citizens have the responsibility to look into their governments and be ahead of this.
If the citizens aren't getting the information they need to know what the health status of the city is, then that's their business. They're supposed to put people in place. You have power. You have power of recall to get those rascals out. I like the state of Missouri. They had a Hancock Amendment. And the Hancock Amendment in Missouri Constitution limits how much of Missourians' personal income can be taxed. And every year it's reported. And they have came under the limits with that amendment. And, here's another thing, too, Carrie. I don't know if it's in place, but if you tried to leave Fort Worth, they can tax you with an exit tax. You're going to have to pay it. Isn't that what they're doing in New Yorkers?
Is that true, Ms. Weinberg?
Well, that is an option. I do not know if they're doing that now. I know that my home state of Illinois has proposed that. You think you're bad here in Fort Worth. You should be living here in the state of Illinois. The state of Illinois has $52,000 per taxpayer. So they're in deep hurt, and there has been discussion of that if you leave the state, you're going to have to pay an exit tax to cover this debt. So I do not think that exists in Fort Worth now, but it is, it's something that the legislators, could vote for.
It exists in New York. And you think that's something on the state level? Well, wait till you find out what it is on the federal level. You got two of them that's running against you at the federal level. You got the regular debt, then you got what's called unfunded liabilities, which the federal government has at a tune of over $100 and some odd $1 trillion. And you equate that to every man. I'm so glad you
brought that up. It's another data point that we have on our website. Our Truth in Accounting website has, and in fact I'll go to that now, they have what the government is telling you the national debt is, and then we have a debt clock that that's at $28.9 trillion with a T. But if you include those unfunded Social Security and Medicare benefits, these again are benefits that have been promised our seniors and have been not funded. The government has no idea where they're going to get the money for that. The number is actually $133.5 trillion. It makes Fort Worth's number of $94,000 per taxpayer look like nothing because each taxpayer's share of the true national debt is $850,000 per taxpayer in order to put
now,
our
what is the revenue at the federal
order.
level? The revenue at the federal level is about $3.5 trillion a year, right?
Yep.
Now, I ask you this, and ma'am, I really appreciate you because most people don't know that, and apparently you have been doing your homework, and you have, done the research. The information is out there if people just do the research themselves. But, Carrie, the citizens of Fort Worth are supposed to control your fiscal government, the people you vote in. And if they're not doing the right thing, you need to do two things. One, you need to investigate them and make sure there was no fiscal malfeasance. Then you need to vote them out. Get rid of them.
I think the citizens of Fort Worth are listening, and trust me, I won't spill the beans, but it's coming. Thank you, Bianchi, tonight for your call. Thank you.
All right.
Ms. Weinberg, question: if we are trying to, really balance this budget, couldn't we do things like reduce salaries, reduce city services, sell some of our assets? Wouldn't that be some options that are available to us?
Yeah. But again, why would you need to do that? They haven't needed to do that because they, have, been hiding the true cost of government. So, they haven't had to make those hard choices. And again, it goes back to that balanced budget requirement and that accountability. If they had to balance the budget by decreasing salaries or increasing taxes or selling off assets, would the voters be happy with that? And the voters don't have that that chance to make that decision because they're not told the correct financial information.
I think
I'm looking at our report for Texas, and again you can go to our data-z.org website and click on Texas, and the per taxpayer burden for each taxpayer in Texas is $11,300. So you add that on top of the $9,400. to get, if you live in Fort Worth, how much debt are you responsible for your city and your state's unfunded debt.
Wow. See, we have a a city manager who I think someone posted the other day makes about $1,000 a day, I think, because he makes over $300,000 a year.
And that does not, this is what people, sorry to interrupt you, but that does not include the pension benefits that he is earning. That is on top of that salary. So.
Y'all heard it first. So, wait a minute, repeat that again. Repeat that again. That's what?
That's just his current paycheck. He's also has earned this, these pension and retiree health care benefits. So how much of those is he earning every single year?
Oh, I'm sure he's
that's something I think the voters and the citizens there should go, okay, he's earning $300,000. Tell me how much retirement debt benefits he's earning every single year on top of that $300,000. And you have that for every employee. You might know what their salary is, but then they hide how much pension benefits they're earning every year. And also, it would be a great schedule if if your listeners want information. It would be a great schedule of here's every employee's salary, here's the health care benefits that we're providing every employee each year, here's the pension benefits that they're earning each year, and how much are they going to earn in pension benefits over their retirement if they live until, let's say, 75, 85 years old. Those would be great. That would be great information.
So we can ask those questions?
Yeah. No, you can ask those questions, and if they won't give you it, you could FOIA it. You could do a Freedom of Information request, and ask them for that information. And they theoretically cannot, not tell you that because that information is available. They do have that information, and if they have that information, then they have to provide it to you.
Well, let me ask I shouldn't say how. What other ways can they reduce these numbers? I mean, what else could the city be doing to get that number down?
Well, I always say, it's a very, quote, easy thing to do. You either need to bring in more money or you need to spend less money. So you bring in more money by increasing taxes. You could sell things. I'm always hesitant to sell fixed assets because, you're selling people's future use of those assets and usually when governments sell assets, they use that money for a short-term thing. So again, it would be like you selling your house to pay for your credit card debt or your current groceries, and that's just not fiscally a good thing to do. And then on the spending side, reduce current spending, cut services, cut benefits, and then other ways to cut spending is, again, to look at those pension and retiree health care debt and see if those can be reduced. In my home state of Illinois, at the state and the city level, we cannot reduce any pension or retiree health care debt. We have a constitutional protection for those theoretically. So hopefully in your jurisdiction you do not have such restraints, but you might.
Remind me of something your staff member, Courtney, was so helpful. There was something that she said that Illinois has a protected benefit or your retirement benefits are protected. Does Texas have that where your retirement benefits are protected?
I do not know the answer to that. I'm sorry. I just don't. Maybe one of your listeners, though. I do not know if you have that in Texas.
So explain.
It would indicate that they don't because remember that our report said they had reduced benefits. And that's a way that they got their pension liability down by $2 billion. So that would indicate that they can reduce those benefits. You may be able to reduce them even more by, but that would you'd probably have to negotiate with your your employees on whether those benefits could be reduced more.
Okay, then let me understand what that term means, because I was thinking just meaning that you couldn't lose it. But when the state of Illinois protects the pension benefits, what does that entail?
That means that we cannot change once it's just a crazy constitutional provision. Once we have promised an employee a benefit, so you start working for the state or a city, you are said, okay, you're going to get X benefits in when you retire. You can't take that back. You can't go, oh, well, our city or the state can't afford those benefits. They cannot, you can't, so we're not going to pay, we can't pay you as generous of benefits. You can't take that back. You're stuck with it. And if they do a benefit enhancement, and the governor signs that benefit enhancement, and a day later they're like, oh, holy crap, we really can't afford that benefit, they can't take it back. It is just so, it's just a crazy provision that they have.
So this is something that the state would put in place?
Yes, the state has it in place, but it applies to city pensions and city benefits.
Wow. So if I were a city employee, what questions should I be asking if I heard about this $2.4 billion shortfall? What questions should I be asking my boss at the city?
Okay, so you could go to the cities, to the and again, these aren't our numbers. We're getting them from their report. So let me find the city's report, the pension plan report. So the pension plan also issues again, it's called a comprehensive annual financial report. You can Google search it and find it. And let me find their specific report. Schedule change.
Well, you're doing that. Can I ask you a question, because it just popped in my head. So so let's just say I don't even know if they have a 401k there, but so your 401k, isn't that money kind of, I think in a lot of cases, like you say, when we see the stock market, they're using your funds with the stock market. That has nothing to do with any of this, right?
Yeah, I do not know if they have a 401k plan. Let me see if I can look into the financial report and see if I can just do a search for 401k in the financial report and see if I can find it. A mention of that. It would be also,
I would be very concerned if I had a 401k with all this going on, because if I wouldn't want them to be moving money from one place to another place, if you understand, for a shortfall.
Yeah, no. The pension money is, fortunately, it's pretty locked. I mean, the pension plan, not the 4. I looked 401k in the report and it didn't have it, but let me look for deferred. They call it a deferred contribution. Let me see if that is, if you guys also have a deferred contribution plan. Let me see if they have that. No, they don't have. They don't appear to have a deferred contribution plan. And let me get down to page 40. I'm trying to find these exact numbers in the report here. I hope I'm in the right plan. Oh, sorry, I have 2 things open. Okay, so I need to go down.
No, you're helping us more than you could ever imagine. Because this is absolutely, we are in the middle of changing over a new mayor, and we pretty much changed over the majority of our council seats. And so with getting ready to move into a new city council building and having a new mayor and a largely new council, then it's time for us to start paying attention. And so we need to come now.
Yeah, so there is a schedule called in the Comprehensive Annual Financial Report of the Fort Worth Pension Plan. There's a very valuable schedule called the Schedule of Changes in Net Pension Liability. Okay? And if I was a city worker, I would ask, just a second, why, I always get confused on those numbers. Okay, how, I would say, well, I'm nervous because I'm looking at that schedule and it says that you guys have put $2.4 billion of money aside to pay pensions, but you have $4.7 billion of pensions, of promises that you've made to me and others. So how are you going to be able to pay me all of the money that you have promised me? Because you only have, again, 51 cents set aside for every dollar that you have promised me.
Okay, so then let's say it like this. If they had, like, all of a sudden an influx of people retiring at the same time, it could pose a problem.
Yes. Another telling number in this report is that their current payroll, and it's very interesting, the current payroll is $509 million. Okay. The liability, the pension liability is $2.4 billion. So another way to think about it is to pay off that liability, they would have to lay off all of the city workers for more than 4 years, more than 4.5 years, put all of their salaries toward that liability, and then it would be paid off. But it would take 4 years of those salaries.
And that's laying off everybody.
That's laying off everybody. And I believe, if I'm correct, that plan includes your policemen. Let me just write down the number of this schedule in case we want to refer to it again. It's on page 38 of that report if anybody wants to go track it down. Another interesting number on that schedule is the $409 million of salary. That was less than $400 million just in 2014. So it has covered the salaries of the people who are covered by this pension, who are most of the city employees, has increased by more than $100 million since 2014. In 7 years.
Okay, say that again. Okay.
In 7 years, the employees' salaries have increased by more than $100 million.
Oh, wow. Oh, yeah. Wow. That's a lot of money.
Yeah.
And I think, if I'm not mistaken, a large part of our budget, like 80%, goes to the police.
Yeah.
So maybe we should decrease. Everybody around here hates the term defund the police, but maybe we need to defund some of the funding that we're giving the police to kind of balance the budget?
That's one way. Yeah, that pension plan, I just wanted to verify, includes your general employees, your police officers, and your firefighters. So it includes all of them.
Okay, so anybody who's a city employee.
Yeah, and, I guess the other question is, has the city's, I know you guys are growing down there very quickly because you are gaining people from my state. Has your city, increased and the services and benefits increased enough to, do you need $100 million more in payroll since 2014? Why has that increased so significantly?
Now, that's very interesting. I don't think that many people get those bigger raises except for maybe people at the top level, maybe. But I don't think the people who are on the lower level are getting increases that would reach $100 million.
Yeah, or have you hired additional workers? I don't think I have the employee count, but that is a large increase. And yeah, so
y'all, my
that's
mind is
interesting.
100 different directions. That's crazy. So it's increased $100 million in 7 years.
Yes.
Wow. Now, does that seem odd for somebody who does crunches numbers like you? Does that number, that large of a number, seem odd in 7 years?
I can't tell that. I don't know if how much your city's growing and how much services. It just seems $100 million. The percentage of it, I guess, compared to what it was before, seems high. If it was only $300 million and then it's all of a sudden $500 million, that's a large. I guess it was close to I'm sorry. It was only $400 million, and now in 7 years it's gone up $100 million. That seems a high percentage of increase. I'm just trying.
Ms. Weinberg, honest to God, you must have wings on tonight because you have been an angel.
Well, you know what? You're an angel to report this. As you say, we my team does put a lot of work in it, and as you noted, unfortunately, it is not covered by the press as much as it said. The elected officials year after year say, "Hey, we balanced the budget. Therefore, the citizens think everything's fine. There's no reason to question it." But they're really not balancing that budget. So it's great for you to report this information.
No problem. Tell us, how do they donate to your organization?
You can just go on our website, and there is on our Data Z. There's a tab at the top that says Donate, and also one at our truthandaccounting.org website to donate. We're 501c3. We're nonpartisan. We don't care. We don't care about tax or spending policy. That's why I tried to not say you should tax to fix this or spend, because we really don't care that. We just want the citizens to have the information they need to be knowledgeable participants in their government. Another great thing that your listeners could also do is when they go to our website, you'll be prompted to sign up for something called Morning Call. This comes from our research director, Bill Bergman, and he on a daily basis accumulates state, local, and federal budgeting and accounting stories and sends out a daily email. So people find that very useful, so they can do that. That'll pop up on the website as you're navigating it, to sign up for that.
So let me ask you this. What kind of feedback or backlash have you gotten over the years from doing this kind of reporting?
Well, some of the government, obviously the governments, don't. One thing is that the big thing is that we're saying that the governments are owing this money right now, and it's like, well, no, we're not saying. You do owe it right now. You're choosing to pay it off over time, just again like your credit card. You have a balance that you're choosing to pay the minimum off every month, but you still have a balance that does exist. And the government officials are like, you're fear mongering, making the public think that they owe this debt right now, which they do, but you can pay it off over time. So that is one of the criticisms. I'm trying to think of any. That's the main criticism we get. Again, because we're using their numbers. It's not like some organizations will adjust the numbers for that I hate to even mention. I'm stumbling mentioning it just because it's so technical. But you can, like I'm looking at your schedules right now, and if you adjust your pension this discount rate, if you adjust it by 1%, it changes your numbers by $500 million in your city. So some people say, hey, they're using the 7% discount rate, that's way too high. In essence, they're pretending that their pension assets will earn, 7% over time, and we don't think that is, other organizations, say that's not correct. You should use a lot lower rate. But we're not doing that. We're kind of giving the governments a break. We don't get criticism for adjusting that rate, even though a lot of people think that rate should be adjusted.
So to be clear, you never fudge any numbers, change any numbers. The numbers are taken directly from the website, and you just put them in your blueprint or whatever your formula, your page.
Yeah, we put them in our blueprint. We get them from the website, from their comprehensive annual financial reports. We do adjust them, like I was mentioning, that again, this gets pretty technical, but technically the city, when they did their 2019 financial report, they were able to use 2018 pension numbers. So to relate that to a person, this would be like you looking at your finances and going, oh, okay, I'm going to look at my credit card debt from last year and include that in my numbers. The city can do that. They are allowed to do it. But when we do our analysis, we use the most recent numbers that are available. So that's one way we adjust the numbers. And then there is something, again, very technical called deferred inflows and outflows that the governments use. And these are things like, well, if your pension assets lose money at any point in time, that affects your expenses that you would record, and they don't want that to happen all in one year, so they adjust the numbers for that. And we're like, no. If your pension assets lose money, you need to report that your pension assets lost money. So we adjust their numbers for that. But again, we're getting how much the adjustment is from their numbers. We're not making those numbers up.
And, with this $9,400 that you speak of, and trust me, the citizens of Fort Worth will not be wanting to pay that. Is there anything the citizens can do to push back and not pay that? I mean, is there a way out?
Again, they can go to the city council, ask for, pension numbers to be adjusted, ask for retiree health care benefits to be adjusted, and then ask for, highlight, other services and benefits that they would, that they think are excessive or they don't think the citizens need, and ask those to be reduced also.
Is that likely to happen if the citizens do ask that?
Well, again, if I was a citizen, I would say, okay, I would very much pay attention to their budget process. I would very much pay attention. I would go to their budget hearings, and I would say, okay, you're saying that you're going to balance the budget. It's required by law. Are you going to, when you quote balance this budget, are you going to fully fund your pension and retiree health care liabilities? Are you going to pay what the actuaries say you should pay, or are you going to shortchange those? And if they say yes, then you'd say, well, then you're not really balancing your budget. That's not a balanced budget. You're shorting. Again, in the city shorted the pension plans by my calculations. I want to make sure I have the right row again. There you are. They shorted, they said they balanced the budget in 2019, but they shorted the pension plans by $23 million. And as an employee, as a citizen, I would go to the budget hearings and say, okay, are you going to do what you've done in the past? Are you going to shortchange the pension contributions and not put any money into the retiree health care plans and say your budget's balanced at the same time? Are you going to continue that practice?
Okay, let me be real. let me make sure I understand what you just said.
Oh no, I appreciate you. I appreciate you trying to make sure it's in terms that your listeners would understand. So please go ahead.
Okay, so you say $23 million was shorted from the pension fund. So are you saying that the money was permanently removed from there, or they just kind of moved the numbers around?
Again, they're accountants, they're numbers people that they hire for the pension plan, said that in order to properly fund the pension plan, that they should have put in 2019 $136 million. Mm-hmm. And instead, they chose to only put $113 million.
Wow. So it was never put in there?
It wasn't put in there. They chose to use that money for other, they either didn't raise enough taxes to fund that, or they chose to use that money for other services and benefits. Let's see, this is Fort Worth, and I believe that they're handling their retiree health care as a pay-as-you-go system. So they're not, again, I'd go to a budget hearing and saying, okay, you're promising employees benefits for their health care. You've promised more than $790 million already. Mm-hmm. Are you going to put money aside for the benefits that have been promised? Or are you just going to promise these benefits and not put any money aside, to pay them?
This is how I look at what you just said. It looks like to me, God forbid, COVID just came through the city, let's just say through City Hall, and just made a whole bunch of employees sick, and a whole bunch of them just had to go out on permanent disability or whatever and count on their pensions to help them or whatever. It sounds like there would be the funding to do that in the middle of a pandemic.
Right. In the middle of the pandemic, or again over time, they only have 51 cents, for these, this benefits that have been promised. How are they going to pay that? And as a future taxpayer, should I be responsible for paying a retiree's health care and pensions and that person's not working for me right now?
Oh, okay, I see what you're saying. Oh, wow. It's so much we don't understand because we have a city that does not have transparency. And if you ask questions, you go down to the city council meeting and you can ask them 100 questions, and they'll just look at you like you're stupid until your 3 minutes runs out, and then they tell you your time's up. So you never get any answers. And if you call them, they're not going to return your calls. And so this just says that we got to regroup a plan to start asking a whole lot more questions about our budget, because it doesn't sound like the budget was ever really balanced. But I think we got the impression, I don't know if it was actually stated or implied, but I think we got the impression that the budget was balanced. It is obviously not.
Right.
Wow.
Right.
So you say we should go to city council meetings and start demanding some answers.
Yep.
Oh, wow.
One, what's your plan to pay these benefits that have been promised? Because you're shorting them. Last year you shorted them. Are you planning to continue to not fund them properly? Are you ever going to set money aside for the retiree health care benefits that have been promised? How are we ever going to come up with that money? Let me look at the number again. You guys have the $791 million of retiree health care liabilities. You don't have any money set aside for that. How are you planning on paying these?
Wow, that's
and
crazy.
How are you planning on paying? I'd be nervous as a police officer, a firefighter, an employee. I would be nervous of I've been promised these benefits. Why isn't the city putting enough money aside to pay them?
And so I would think, now this is just me thinking out loud, so forgive me. I would think if there became a problem with this, that if you were like a widower of like a city employee, that you would probably be the first to get a slice of your check or part of your check sliced rather than a living employee. What do you think?
I don't know. That would be I would think that they would be like, oh, well, the widow really needs, that money. They're on their own, so maybe they would be the last ones to cut it. There's different ways to look at it.
Okay. I'm just thinking out loud, because I think I saw something where our former Byrd or Councilman Byrd had said at one point that the widowers of some of the fallen officers or firefighters, that he saw a way to cut the budget by taking some of their money away.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. You know what? I don't know if anybody sees the value like I see the value in what you do, because I don't know how many reports have you all done over the years. If you've been doing this since 2002, how many reports does that mean that you all have done?
Well, on the state side, we've done 11 years of what we call the financial state of the state. So we take every single state's financial report and recast it in this format that you see your cities on. And then for the cities, we've been doing the financial state of the cities. Let me see. I had that on that chart that I did for you. Do I still have that chart up? I might have gotten rid of it. The cities, I think we've been doing that for 5 years. And then obviously we've been doing the financial state of the union. On and off since we started. So we, it's a lot of, digging. It's actually gotten easier over the years. One, because we're more experienced, but also because previously, not until 2015, and then it wasn't until 2015 that we were able to get the state and cities to be required to put these pension liabilities on their balance sheets. They were able to maintain, I think it was 80-90% of these amounts off their balance sheets. They didn't have to report them. So we had to, that's why we started doing these reports, is because the cities didn't tell you how much their liabilities were. Remember Enron accounting, something like that? The governments were not required to put these liabilities in their numbers. So early on, we had to, dig through numerous reports and look through actuarial reports and other reports to find how much each city's and state's liabilities were. It was even harder before, but it's gotten a little bit easier because now they're finally required to put these liabilities on their books.
So at some point, can the citizens ask for an independent audit of the books?
The financial statement is audited every single year. So you may be able to ask what they call for a forensic audit. And that would dig into it further. And I'm just looking through your report again. Let me see if you have this problem. Yeah, I'm sure you do, because all the governments do.
Who would pay for that?
What's that?
If the forensic audit, who would pay for that?
Some people have, some citizens have gotten together and paid for the forensic audit. We fought for years to get those pension liabilities on their books. Now what we're fighting, and we finally won, it wasn't, I'm modest, so I wouldn't say it was just us, but it was us and others. We finally won. And the thing we're fighting now, which is what the city's going to use to sort of deflect your comment that, hey, you're really not balancing your budget, is when they account for their general fund, which is their largest budgeted fund, that fund is not accounted for properly. It's accounted for on a cash basis. And so it doesn't include the correct pension and retiree health care expenses. It includes just the cash that they choose to pay. So those numbers are not done correctly. And one thing that you and your other fellow citizens might run into is the city might point to these statements that are prepared using, in essence, the cash basis and say, if you look at their 2020 report, it says, oh, look, we actually we actually did have a surplus. It shows $30 million on this one general report. And let me see what your other report does actually show they have a surplus too. So it is actually all your prior debt that is causing troubles, not what they're accumulating right now. But anyway, they keep the bottom line to that conversation is they keep two sets of books. So that even confuses people even further. And we're trying to fight at Truth in Accounting to get rid of that second set of books so that confusion is gone.
Wait, I'm sorry, you can't say that real fast. You got to. Wow, that just went by me and came back real fast. So did you just say the city has two sets of books?
Yeah, they're required by the accounting rules to keep two sets of books. One which is done properly, and one which is done on the cash basis. So we're fighting to get rid of that second set of books at Truth in Accounting.
Okay, I think you assume we knew what that second set means. You said case and what?
For their budgeted funds, they only do what another way to think about it is checkbook accounting. They only include, here's all the money that's coming into my checkbook, and here's all the money going out of my checkbook. They don't include all the expenses that they're incurring in the second set of books.
Wow. That almost sounds illegal.
Well, one thing on our Truth in Accounting website that I'm just starting to work on now, and you can read it in my Sheila's Reflections, on our Truth in Accounting website, I think it's under Resources, is looking at this idea of, does this fall under the anti-fraud provisions? Because and that's what I'm asking. I'm an accountant. I'm not an attorney. So in my recent blog post, I'm, just sort of asking, if the governments keep two sets of books, if they say their budget's balanced but they're going into debt at the same time, are they really, is this part of the anti-fraud provisions? I don't know, but I think it's a question that somebody needs to answer.
That's scary. I mean, I'm sorry. That almost seems like that they can walk in front of you and say everything is fine when the house could literally be on fire. Yes,
and it's especially true. Well, again, it's true in every jurisdiction most jurisdictions because they say that they're balancing their budget, but they're going into debt at the same time. So, how can how can that not be? The definition of fraud is, again, I'm an accountant, not attorney, but the definition I understand of fraud is misleading and confusing statements. So how is this not misleading and confusing? So I honestly don't understand why the Securities and Exchange Commission has not gone after some of these governments to say, hey, what are you doing? What you're saying is materially false and it's misleading. So why isn't the SEC going after them for that?
Very interesting. We got another caller, Ms. Weinberg. Are you willing to take another call?
Sure.
Okay. We're going to go to 972-987. Good evening. You're on Let's Talk Fort Worth.
Hey, Carrie, thank you for taking my call, and good evening to your guest. I'll be brief, considering I see the time is wrapping up. I just had a quick question regarding, I see where we are. Thank you for coming on. Thank you for all you shared with us. Thank you for all the research you've done and, just provided. Thank you for your service, for what you're doing, not only for Fort Worth, but for all cities and, who might be, concerned about citizens who might be concerned about what's going on with their local government. But regarding the ISD, the school and let's say the Fort Worth ISD, how does it, or their budget is separate from the cities, correct? Or how does all that factor in? Is it a separate budget and this, that, or the other? How is that? How does that work?
That one I cannot answer. So it's the school district. Let me see. I know let's see, major employers. Yeah, I think that the school district is separate. And so they would have they potentially could have an extra additional, each person living in the city of Fort Worth could have an additional debt related to that. So I'm looking at their 2020 financial statement. And Carrie, correct me if I'm wrong, I think the listener was talking about the Fort Worth Independent School District. Is that correct?
Yes, he's still on the line, yes.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
yes, the Fort Worth Independent School
District.
Yeah,
and that is, quote, a separate legal entity. I'm looking at, again, this is the city's report, but they're saying that the school district has $1 billion of debt. So that would be on top of the debt, and that is probably just their bonded debt. It does not include their pension debt. For other cities, we have some they're in Texas. We have a couple in Texas. We do a report called the Combined Taxpayer Burden. So if you live in the city of Dallas, how much is the city debt? How much is the school district debt? How much is the county debt? How much is the state debt? We do add all of those up, but we don't. We only do that for the 10 most populated cities, and unfortunately, Fort Worth does not fall into that. But the caller makes a very valid point that while we're mentioning $9,400 for the city, it doesn't include what each taxpayer's share of debt would be for the school district, the county, and the state. We do know the state number is $11,000, so you'd have to add the school districts on top of those two numbers.
Okay, thank you for answering my question. Thanks for taking my call, Carrie.
Thank you. Ms. Weinberg, you have been a wealth of knowledge tonight. You will never know just how much. Again, tell people how they can donate to you. And one other question I have for you, last question, is can people ask you or get your organization to do independent audits?
We would do independent, for example, if they wanted a financial state of the school district, we would be willing to put one of those together, or other governments. We don't do individual audits. That's just not part of our. We just don't have the resources to do that. So maybe we could get those if you're a donor, especially a very generous donor, would like to donate. You can donate at our truthinaccounting.org website or our data-z or data-c .org website. Both of those have donate buttons. If people want more information, there are contact emails on the website. If they want questions that they could ask at the city council meeting, we would be happy to provide those. But the best thing they can do is start going. Those city council meetings, especially the budget meetings, they can be very tedious, very boring. So very few people attend those. And as one of your callers was mentioning, it's the citizens who, really, it is their responsibility to pay attention to this, even if they don't.
Wow. Ms. Weinberg, I must admit, you have been a pleasure to interview tonight. You have been so informative, and you have just really made accounting not boring at all. Most people hate numbers, and you have just made it an absolute joy to listen to just how in debt we are. And
it's been delightful to give you bad news.
Exactly. I mean, how great crazy is that? But I think you have informed us in a way that we didn't even know of some information that we needed to know. We didn't even know that it was there and something that we needed to be paying attention to. So absolutely, we thank you so much tonight for your time. I ask everybody, please, y'all, I don't know how can they give any amount, or do you require a certain amount of donations, or can it be no matter how?
No, they can give any amount. We'll take anything. Every little bit helps. We understand. Sometimes we think that some people think those smaller donations don't mean that much, but they actually mean more to me, because I understand that some people might not have the financial resources to give bigger donations, but they're giving out of a smaller pot of money. They're willing to give us money, so those still are very meaningful to me. And if your listeners, if people want to get together and we could do a webinar, we'd be willing to do that. Or if they have any questions, they can get our contact information on our website.
And her website is www.truthinaccounting.org. That's truthinaccounting. Isn't that it?
Yep, that's it.
That's it. So listen, y'all, one great show tonight. I really enjoyed this. I wasn't sure how it was going to turn out, y'all, and I did it trembling.
Yeah. Oh, my gosh, we're going to have an accountant on who's going to talk about numbers.
Exactly. We trust me, we're going to have you back on. But again, thank you, Ms. Weinberg, for coming on tonight. Thank your staff for being so kind to me this week and giving me all the information I needed. Y'all, this is it. A whole 2 hours talking about Fort Worth and their finances. But it's been very informative. So again, thank you, Ms. Weinberg. Thank you to the listening audience. And we'll see you next Thursday, as we're talking to the NOI, the Nation of Islam, and the Brotherhood about conflict resolution. Okay, so we'll see you all on the 17th. Thank you. Good night.